Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Ethereum and the fact that it is still maintaining itself slightly below the prior all-time high. If you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 100,000 subscribers, so make sure you guys subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So here we are. Ethereum's at 1267. What a journey it has been. Now, one of the things we've discussed is that these types of conditions are primed for Ethereum to gain against Bitcoin. And we've discussed it endlessly, where we said a slow bleed by Bitcoin, because it's so far elevated above the 20-week moving average, should be good for Ethereum. And so far, you can see that in fact that is the case. Over the last, for Bitcoin, since January 8th, it is down 23%, 23.5% at the present time. However, over those 16 days, let's go from January 8th, it has not precluded Ethereum from January 8th. Let's find January 8th. Here we are. So Ethereum, as measured on January 8th, is up 4%. Is it something to write home about? No. But what's more important is, as we know, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. Because this valuation for Ether Bitcoin is great for people that are just wanting to maybe flip between Bitcoin and Ethereum. They don't want to go to fiat. This is a trend that we identified last year. And I really shouldn't say we identified it. I mean, the data identified it. We just looked to see what the data said. And the data said, you know what? 5 years in a row, Ether bled against Bitcoin in Q4. 5 years in a row, Ether had an amazing move in January the following year. This makes year number 6. All right? And where are we so far? Well, from the bottom, as we said, from the bottom, we're up a modest 72%. So hopefully we can continue up higher. But if you look to see where we currently are, we are a stone throw from the local top of 0.04 or so. Okay, so from where we currently are, it would take us about another 3.5% to get to the local top that we reached in August of 2020. A stone throw, even if you have a weak arm, could get us there. It's not that far. And we are rapidly approaching it. And what's interesting is that we are approaching it somewhat in a quiet manner, right? We're not approaching it in a sense where Ether USD is exploding right now. We are approaching it in a way that every time Bitcoin has one of these like dumps where it dumps a few $1,000 and then recovers, but it ultimately recovers to a lower level than its pre-dump level, every time that happens, it seems like Ether continues to gain on Bitcoin. And you can see that it's systematically true. We're basically at the top here over the last week. We're at a valuation of 0.03926201, and we are approaching the prior top from last summer. Now, we know that we are heading, our goal that we've been discussing for months is to ultimately come back up to the 50-month moving average. So we have the 20-month on there, and now we're just going to overlay the 50-month as well, just so we can keep an eye on it. Let's make this pink. Okay, so remember, it was our top, but it was also the 50-month moving average, which has increased since then. And now the 50-month moving average is at around 0.0417. So in order for us to get to that level, which I would actually consider more important, than just 0.04, but certainly 0.04 would be symbolic, that level would actually be closer to about 6% from where we currently are. So not too far to go if in fact this trend continues. And it's easy to get disenfranchised when Ethereum starts moving sideways for a few days. But if you just look at the last month, look at this. It's completely wiped away all the losses except for this wick that it's seen since September. Those losses completely gone in January, or as we like to say, Ethuary. So what we want to do is we want to maintain a pragmatic view of this market, because we know that at any time Bitcoin could basically pull the rug from beneath us and say we're all going down. Okay, this is a possibility. So I would always say being cautiously optimistic is okay. And the reason why I say cautiously optimistic as opposed to pessimistic is because I don't believe in a lot of traditional technical analysis. I just simply don't. However, momentum is one that hands down I think is really good at discussing trends and identifying the likely direction of an asset. An asset that's trending upwards is more likely to continue trending upwards than one that's not currently trending upwards. And so the reason why I would say cautiously optimistic is because we are in a uptrend. We have been following this move of Ether Bitcoin since January of 2020, a systematic trend reversal, this uptrend that we're in. So I would say cautiously optimistic. The reason we need to be cautious is just look at the Bitcoin chart. Okay, look at this. Now, I'm going to turn this onto a linear scale so that I can fulfill my narrative a little bit more. Let's just be honest. But if you were to look at this chart and someone gave you this chart and said, fill in what happens, right? A lot of people, and that's not to say that this would happen because again, a lot of people get things wrong, but a lot of people would look at this if you didn't tell them it was Bitcoin and they didn't have any skin in the game. They would say, oh well, this looks like a bubble, and there's a higher probability that this trends down than trends back up in the immediate short term. Now we don't know that will happen, and it's Bitcoin. We've seen many 30%, 40% corrections for it last market cycle, and it ultimately just gathered itself and then continued higher. However, there is a non-negligible chance that we'll look back and just say, oh yeah, it was a bubble, we came back down, and we ultimately composed ourselves much lower than people might think, and then we trend up. And if you noticed, I was watching pretty closely. If you noticed, when Bitcoin dumped below 30K the other day, Ether Bitcoin for those few minutes was starting to look very weak, okay? Because the Ethereum bulls, I think at the time, they were getting really spooked. And so if Bitcoin gives the indication that it's heading back down to, say, the 20-week moving average, which is all the way down here, if it gives that indication, then Ethereum is not likely going to do well in the short term. It doesn't mean it can't bounce later on, but we just want to maintain being somewhat cautious because we have to consider all possibilities. Some channels, they don't consider all possibilities. They just tell you it's going to go up and up and up, and then at the slightest glimpse of a head and shoulders pattern, the narrative changes, or at the slight glimpse of a short-term dump, the narrative changes, right? What we're looking at here is we're saying, okay, let's take a step back and identify the risk involved. And we recognize this risk, and it's because of this risk that we've been taking over the last month, because we know that Bitcoin has been really overextended since, for the last at least month or two. But it was because we took this risk that it's allowed us to watch Ethereum soar and go back above $1,400. Obviously, it's back below $1,300 now, but it has enabled us to experience this massive move by Ether against Bitcoin in January. And if we said we didn't want to take this risk on Ethereum because it looked like Bitcoin was in a bubble, then we would have missed out on this move. So again, it's the risks you take. You have to figure out if the risk is worth it to you or not. And sometimes again I get painted as a bear for simply pointing out what the risks are. But again, if you don't consider all the risks involved, you're simply not doing yourself any favors at all, because it's these people that don't consider the downside risk that ultimately will get burned, because they have this mindset of it has to go to a specific value before they'll think about changing their mindset. Whenever it reaches that value, they just revert and then say, okay, I'm going to push the goalpost back and say, okay, I thought Bitcoin is going to go to this level, but because it already made it to that level, now I'm going to push it back another 10% and another 10% until one day it doesn't make it to their next goalpost, and then it just comes crashing back down. So this is why you have to consider the downside risk. And if you're okay with the downside risk, then you can make an investment and say, you know what? I've considered the downside risk, and I think it's worthwhile to take it. Now, none of this is financial advice. You have to figure out if it makes sense for you or not. And I can't tell you if it makes sense for you. What I can say is that if you take the risk and it pays off, it was not luck, it was a calculated investment. So let's go back and look at Ether USD. And we're going to follow up with something we looked at the other day. And that is, well, Ether hit its prior all-time high on January 19th. We also know that Bitcoin hit its prior all-time high back in December. Okay, and let's zoom in on that. Let's switch it back to a log scale and go back over here. So Bitcoin got to its prior all-time high right over here, right over here in November. This was November 30th. It reached around 19.8. On November 24th, it reached around 19.5. So let's say that it first reached its all-time high around November 25th, or November 24th, November 25th. It then came down, and then a week later, it put in a new top. Okay, and the top that it put in from the top of this wick to the top of the new wick was 2% higher, and it took approximately 5 days. Okay, now we know that Ethereum is not going to identically follow Bitcoin, but if it did, where would that put us? Well, January 19th is when it hit it. So if it were to go up 2% over 5 days, then that would put it at approximately almost $1,500 today, right? Over the next 24 hours or so. Now, of course, there's a really good chance that Ethereum does not follow Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form. It could take us a lot longer to get back to the prior all-time high. But this is something to keep in mind because Bitcoin did something similar where it came up to the all-time high, it got rejected down, okay? And it got rejected down over 2 days or 1 day or so, it dumped 17%. What did Ethereum do after it got to its all-time high here? Right here. It dumped 25% over 2 days or so. If you want to go to the bottom of this wick, we could say it dumped 28% over 3 days. And so this is that extra volatility that we see for Ethereum. This is that volatility. You pay for that extra ROI with more units of risk. So this is exactly what we're seeing. And now it has started to recover. And even as I'm making this video, it looks like it has been trending up. And maybe we'll even watch it break $1,300 here in a little bit. But let's actually check back in on the Ether Bitcoin valuation. We're at 0.0398. So in the span of making this video, we are actually systematically approaching the top from September. So perhaps what I should do is go ahead and end this video and consider starting a live stream. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Let's go for 100,000 subscribers. Remember to check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. And then the last thing is we do have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. You get access to weekly reports, weekly premium videos, a Telegram alerts channel, a Telegram chat room, a risk dashboard, a whole lot more. Make sure you guys check it out. We have a lifetime deal. You can find a link to that in the description below. That will be ending in 1 week, at least for the sale price on that. Make sure you guys subscribe. Let's go for 100,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.